Come back to the banks of Breach Pond to do some fishing up in the water. Very simple rig today. Got a float that takes 2.5 BB, just a little insert waggler with a 2mm tip, and then fishing set to about 3 foot deep, size 20 barbless hook, number 10 hook, a number 10 shot about 1 foot from the hook, and another one another foot above that, and then just over 1 foot up to the float, which is locked with 2 BB, a number 4, a number 8, with a 1/2 inch gap between the shot around the float. The float's got a little swivel on the base, which means it will collapse better when I strike. And I'm going to be fishing about 3 rod lengths out with maggots and see how I get on. Just to say, I'm expecting to catch rudd at first, maybe some roach and skimmers. It's about 9 foot of water out there. Some of the swims on here where it's difficult to get a camera in, there's 14 or 15 foot, but you can still catch at 3 foot. And the thing is to try and find out the taking depth. Some bites will come on the drop, some when it's suspended. So let's see what happens. I'm baiting up with 2 maggots at the moment. I'll leave the line on the top for them just for now, not sink it. It's very calm. I'm expecting a few rudd. There's been rudd out there while I've been tackling up. Might take a few minutes to get the fish going. It was a cold night last night. It was about 4 degrees, and we had a hell of a lot of rain yesterday. The pond's come up in level, although there's an outflow. It's coming in almost as fast as it's going out. And quite a few of the swims on this pond, because you can catch close in up in the water, the pole's quite good. I've got a bite. I'm going to bet on a rudd, but it might not be. See what we get. Oh, that one got away. I think that was a roach. Fresh bait every time. Where there's one, there's more. I just had a fish rise there on where I've just fed. Maybe the rudd will find it quite quickly. One thing we do have to do is find the taking depth, and we can't do that with plumbing. So we will have to move the float around a little bit. Another bite. One of those small rudd. Still finding the small rudd. Another roach. Quite a mixture out there of roach and rudd. Shallow up again. I'm not very happy with this hook. Let's get rid of that one. Put a new hook on. For some reason, some of these hooks are losing their point very quickly. I use the loop-to-loop method with hooks. It's dead simple. I tie my own hooks at home. I can just take a hook out knowing the hook length's about the right length. Loop it on, add a new shot, and we're fishing again. Doesn't take very long at all. Slightly different patterns, though it's also a 20, it's smaller than the It's a Kamasan barbless instead of a Drennan. That came as it settled. That's a roach. You don't have to cast overhead with these little floats. You can flick them sideways like that. Quite useful when you're under trees. And since the last session, I've put some new line on this reel. It's far better. The line's filled up, spooled properly right up to the top. Feels a better fish. Takes a bit of time for fish that are a bit bigger to turn up. It's a better rudd. Oh, dropped it. Should have netted that one. Another male that's very rough to the touch. Little roach bream hybrid for a change. Seem to be getting one of those every session on here at the moment. No sign of any skimmers yet. I'm not really fishing for the skimmers. I think I'd need to use some cloud ground bait to get those going. Maybe for another day we'll try that out. Another little roach. That was when it had settled. Feels very different. Is this a small bream, maybe? Yeah, just a half decent skimmer if we can get him. Using this method fishing casters in the past, caught huge catches of good bream. Fish up to £5, fishing just 3 foot deep in 15 foot of water. You wouldn't think it would work. Well, that's the first skimmer of the day. It's only about 12 ounces or so, not very big. Shows that they will come up in the water. Slightly better roach, but still not very big. Feels a bigger fish again. I had a bream just now. This might well be a bream or what? That's a good roach if we can get him. Small consolation. Hope you've enjoyed this short video about fishing up in the water. It's an important technique. It works surprisingly well in the warmer months, even sometimes in the colder months in the winter. But once it's warmed up in the spring, as it is now, then you can catch fish up in the water right through to the autumn. And when we go onto the river, we're going to find the same thing for dace, chub and roach, all of which will feed right up in the water. On the pond where I've been showing you, I've caught fishing in what is 15-foot deep swims, catching fish at 2 or 3 foot deep. A lot of people think the fish come up in the water, that they just rise up and start feeding just under the surface. Quite often the fish are already at that layer. They're 2 or 3 feet down, but they're not feeding. But as the feed starts to go in, they'll start to feed. And it's understanding that the feed will get them to start feeding. One of the swims on this pond many years ago, I was in a match and I was convinced the fish were going to feed up in the water. And I kept feeding. In the first hour, I couldn't get a bite up in the water. I caught a couple of fish right down hard on the bottom in about 12 foot of water, a tench and a bream of about a pound. But then after a couple of hours, I found them and they really turned on, fishing just 4 foot deep, catching on the drop every cast, catching good bream. Those fish were there all the time at that layer. They hadn't come up off the bottom. They weren't on the bottom. There were odd fish on the bottom, the tench and the odd smaller bream, but the big ones, the 3 or 4 pounders, were right up there, and they just needed that incentive to feed, which was to see the food dropping past them. In the end, 1 or 2 of them start to feed and the others follow suit. So like I say, it's an enjoyable way to fish, takes practice, so keep practicing. And in the next video we'll look at fishing deep water swims, maybe with a lot of weight down the line and slider floats. So goodbye for now. Thanks for watching.